Welcome to Tight HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd, where planning meets reality.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at on this fine February morning. For some of us, it's going to be a hot day. For some of us, it's still a little bit cold, but I guess that is what it is when we're in the winter here. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about risk impact assessment and the role it has in disaster continuity, business continuity planning, and realistically disaster recovery. Now, before I get too deep into this, my name is Todd DeVoe. I am the what is my title? Yeah, I am I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Titan HST, and we are one of the leading mass notification companies right now in the United States and in the world, I would say. But we're doing some really fantastic work in this space, and I'm excited about it. And the reason why I'm sharing this information is because, when we start talking about systems and things like this, you want something that's simple to use, and that's why I started getting involved with Titan HST, and I just wanted to kind of share that because people have asked that question, and I want to answer this. I'm also a instructor, professor at the post-secondary level, and I love learning about new things. I love sharing these things. This is why we're here today. So business continuity today, together, we are going to learn and share things. And that being said, one of my former students and a business continuity expert in his own right has reached out to me. We were talking this weekend over LinkedIn, discussing what it really is, what we're talking about here with business continuity and some of the principles and things that we should be covering. And so we're going to make a little bit of a shift here with business continuity today. Once a month, we'll be bringing on a guest, and I'm going to actually bring him on. David, you know it, we talked about it. But we're going to bring on guests to talk about, different ideas in business continuity, how they implemented theory, how they do things for best practices. And I think it's going to be an exciting addition to the program, and it'll be once a month. So just stand by for that. Today, we're going to talk about risk impacts assessment and what risk assessment does and why you should do it. And I don't want to steal too much thunder of when we start having our guests in here, but we're going to get a little skirt the issue here a little bit. We're going to kind of get a high level of conversation what's going on. So at the end of the day, when we start taking a look, whether it's business continuity planning, emergency management planning, what risk are we really planning for, and why should we do this assessment? And so I think one of the things that we do poorly, right, is when we talk about recovery poorly, is because we put all of our efforts and planning into that response phase, and we practice response phases. We do that well, right? But then when it comes to the recovery side of it, we didn't really plan for it. And we didn't really do a proper risk assessment necessarily to know how to start planning to recover from those issues. So the disaster recovery plan, right, it is a document that contains all the information that you need to have. Well, I shouldn't say all. The majority of the information that you need to have regarding the threats that you are facing. So, like I said at the beginning of the show here today, I'm in Southern California. It is a beautiful day out here today. Those that are back east where it's still cold and icy, there are some other issues that you guys have to face compared to what we're facing out here. Now, obviously, on the other side of it is during the summer and drier times when the winds start kicking up, we have some crazy fires that rip through here, and those are fires that back east you don't necessarily have to deal with. So there's trade-off between what the threats are, right? And so understanding that, I think, is critical. So I really wouldn't have a large plan if I'm thinking about my geographical location, specifically on like ice removal plan, right? Because I'm not going to have an issue with people walking up to my doorstep and slipping on ice. Where, when I lived in New York, obviously that was one of the issues that we had to deal with during the winter months, right? So kind of the idea of the threat. So the assessment of risks for all potential vulnerabilities, and you know what they are, and they're easy to find. What I mean by that is you just do a quick Google search and you're going to find out what those threats are, right? And what they impact on your business. So when you're doing this assessment, it's a pretty easy graph that you want to create, right? You want to have one side the threats, and you want to have the other side the probability, and then you want to have another axis that talks about what the impact on your business will be, right? And so I think that's the start of it. And so when you understand what those threats are, right, and you understand how to do that assessment, now what you want to do is do your risk impact assessment, right? And so first thing you want to do was like list all of your assets you have, all right? And what are they the most vulnerable to your organization? Whatever that is, all right? And we're not going to get too detailed because it's different for each individual organization. And to cope with this task, you have to consider, doing like a basic assessment to all departments, all divisions that you have, right? What is important specifically for that department, for that division, for that group, for that working area? That what do they need to continue doing their job during a time of, well, if they have to go remote like we're doing with COVID, or can they, what issues do they have? Another side of it here is then you want to identify those risks, specifically what those risks are to those individuals, to those groups, right? So whether it's natural disaster, systems failure, errors, whatever's going on, or like in some cases with cyber, right? With cyber activities going on, we even though it might not be necessarily your area of expertise, you should have a basic understanding of what those threats are and who you can tap onto to be able to fix those issues. you know, and then what are the potential consequences of those actions that occur? Right. So when you perform, when you perform that risk impact analysis, you have to determine the financial loss that your company may face as well, or the organization that may face. And this is where it's interesting for me is coming from the government side of this equation. We're not necessarily looking at financial losses impactful, right? We could have some, but we're also looking at services lost. Like what services could we not provide to the community that we're looking at? So, for instance, are we closing down the community center? Well, if we have to close down the community center, say there's a daycare associated with that community center, how does that impact those that we are doing work for the daycare, right? Those parents that need to have kids in that daycare, what are they going to do? What impact does it have? Can we have other alternative ways of taking care of or locations that we could do to keep the daycare up and running? That's like a good conversation to have. And when it's on business side of things, yeah, absolutely. What is the financial impact? I was just discussing weather with a meteorologist and in the emergency operations center, and during the conversation, he was saying he's out of Houston in the oil industry, and he says one of the conversations that they have as the storms are coming in is, shall we go offline or stay online? And he goes, there's financial impacts and decisions that are made on both sides of it. And one is you could be a multi-million-dollar loss by shutting down and nothing occurs. Or on the other side, it could be billions of dollars loss is if they don't shut down and then there's an environmental impact on that. So you have to weigh those issues on those consequences on the actions that you're going to take. Now, on the recovery side of it, it's easier to recover a loss of production. When I say that, it's because it's a few $1 million that you're losing in production and time compared to the recovery of, say, an oil spill or a gas issue or gas burnoff that has to occur where you actually there's environmental issues that occur associated with that. So going into that, you have to prioritize that risk, right? The final level of risk that that organization is willing to take, and then also pair that with the threats and vulnerabilities. So based on the assessment, you combine those two factors, the likelihood of the the oil, we'll go back with the oil story, is it the likelihood of that oil leak occurring, right? Is definitely a higher risk and threat to the community and to the organization than a loss of productivity for that time. So if you're excuse me, so if you're leaning conservatively on making that decision, obviously you're saying, hey, let's shut down, and then let's recover from that. right? And so, what are the continuity risks that are associated with that aspect of it? Again, I don't know the oil industry well enough to really speak intelligently about it, but understanding that there are services that are going to be disrupted, and you're going to have a potentially a short-term, gas price spike, which can impact the community. We've seen this happen a lot when here in California, when we have a refinery go offline for whatever reason, and you see a bump in the price in gas. And so that can cause also other issues associated with it, such as bad press. And then the crisis management team has to come in and kind of deal with that. And then, or maybe the government would have to open up reserves if you're a large enough oil company. So a little of this is just me talking theory, right? So obviously, if you guys are in the oil business, you know more. So please don't hold me to that. So, and then you want to document those results. The final step of performing that risk impact assessment is documenting this and creating a easy to read document for your C-suite, so they don't have to get too deep into the weeds. I mean, and then also so anybody can take a look at this quickly and really see that. And you can do this very many different charts and whatnot that would make it really easy to do. Matter of fact, there's some great templates out there that you can find, and we can share those with you if you wish. So again, at the end of the day, it's all about being prepared in advance, right? You need to not ignore the threats that are around you. You need to understand the threats that are impacting your organization, and you have to plan for those threats. And putting that onto paper is critical as well. Also, with that, how do you communicate that threat to your organization? And that's kind of where we come into as Tight HST, where you can actually put your documents in one location on your communication device. Also, share that information with who needs to have it, and also alert your entire organization on any threats that are coming their way. Thank you so much for spending time with me this morning. And again, thank you for looking here with Tight HST. I remember, follow us on your favorite podcast player. I'm always here on LinkedIn each week. Take care, stay safe, and stay hydrated.